Hello, it is 5:30. Welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining. So we saw the video today. Oh, and I see that there's comments in the chat. Okay, perfect. And so very exciting challenge, so many ways to frame it. Please feel free. I'm monitoring the chat. So what are your impressions, your first impressions of the challenge? I think we could absolutely frame it in terms of, one way, this is just, go where you want, but what's exciting to it for me is in terms of, that there's so many things sucking us out of our cities where we come together as citizens, right? Our downtown cores where we can actually, like, there's the big box stores, there's of course online shopping, and how do we establish and maintain our places? So it's a very exciting challenge. Hello, Jessica. I hope you guys have fun with it. And what's also exciting about it is, of course, there's a lot that has already been tried, as Jeff mentioned in the video, such as, he talked about festivals, and of course there's maps of where you can go downtown. And so you as a team have the option of either thinking of totally new ideas or of taking existing ideas and then innovating them and then saying, okay, why might they not be as effective or compelling as perhaps they could be, and how do we push that to the next level? So obviously a lot of opportunity for empathic research as well. We all know people who shop downtown, who don't shop downtown, or who go downtown, never mind shopping even. So very exciting. So hopefully you find the challenge interesting and engaging, and we look forward to hearing your work. Let me get started with the slides. I just got to go into screen share. Hold on, here it comes. Okay, so hopefully you see the slides right now. You know what? Sorry, is Michael on? Because now I realize this is the same thing as last week. We're now, you see the slides, but I don't see your comments now. Michael, are you on?
Amy, I am, and I'll monitor the chat.
Thanks so much. So that's, of course, the problem with this. I guess it's just a flaw with this program. So, okay, thanks so much. So just interrupt me when questions come up that I should address. So I sort of want to start tonight's presentation with a formula for creativity. And when I'm talking creativity, the definition of creativity is that which is novel and appropriate / useful, both those things. And that's important because creativity isn't just that which is novel, because that which is novel, of course, can be called crazy-tivity. We can all think of imaginative ideas, but we're looking for that intersection, right? Of something that if there's no point doing something that sort of is same old, then why put in the effort to do design thinking? And on the other hand, there's no point doing the new just for the sake of being new. So the formula for creativity, according to Ruth Noller, is that you need knowledge. Of course you need knowledge. You need to know about the topic, and that's what you're going to be doing in the next few weeks, is diving deep into the topic. You need, we all know to be creative, you need imaginative skills, to imagine things that people haven't imagined before. And of course you need evaluative skills to make them useful. So once you're imagining, then you're like, okay, how do we actually bring this to life and make it real? And can this really work for those we're designing for? But why I wanted to start this session with this formula was because all of this is a function of attitude. And so, there's been nothing new or great in this world ever created without enthusiasm. And so the first part of this presentation, I want to talk a little bit about you as a team before I go into some more concrete methods from design thinking. So we want to urge you, and people argue all the time when people talk about design thinking in organizations, there's always the argument that people think that they can just apply it like a cookie cutter approach, which of course doesn't work, because there's a mental model and an attitude and a way of being and approaching the world with curiosity and openness, and an ability to tolerate ambiguity that comes with this kind of thinking, because when we're exploring new ways of being and challenges that have not been solved, we don't know the answer. If there was a formula we could learn in strategy class, then people would solve it. It would be algorithmic. So you need a bit of an experimental attitude. So how do I change this slide? Come on, computer, don't fail me now. Hold on one second. Here it comes. And Csikszentmihalyi, I always have to put the thing in there, talks about flow, and there's creative flow, and flow is that exact place where you're experiencing enough challenge that you're feeling challenged. It's not easy, but it's not so hard that you're stressed out. And that you have just the right amount of skill. And what it feels like is you're feeling like you're intrinsically motivated, that you have clarity, you feel focused, and this is what we're hoping you will achieve. And for me last year, and I want to say, you guys are the second cohort going through this challenge. So we have some things figured out, but not everything. So we're so excited that you're working with us. But we have a lot of things figured out. It's not like it's Wild West when you come to Victoria. But one of the things that was really exciting for me to see last year was so my first degree is in architecture, and so I'm very used to that kind of studio design kind of working. And of course, it's very common. Anyone who's ever been an architecture student knows part of the culture is working all night and it's never enough, and you keep going in the creative process. And what really struck me in the final presentations last year was how many teams kind of changed their idea at the final hour because they thought of something better. And rather than perfecting their PowerPoint, they really just were in, it seemed like that flow of really wanting to just be absorbed in the challenge. All right, so let's talk about the design thinking process. So I talked about this last week, but I know there's some difference. There's not always overlap between the weeks, but basically design thinking is about an approach to innovation which advocates that business people approach management problems as designers approach design problems. And what that means is if we don't know the future, if we have to invent something new, we can't learn that only from case studies. We can't learn that from being really, really good students of what has happened in the past. At a certain point, you have to take a leap into a future that is always unknown. So one of the best known models which we're adopting is the one you see on the screen, which you start with empathy, deeply, deeply understanding. So Jeff said in the video, we think we know why people don't go downtown, but but there's probably things we haven't uncovered. So design thinking always assumes that there's a gap between what people say and what they actually do. And I'll give you an example from one of my own classes years ago, where we put out a challenge to students to reduce single occupancy vehicles to rural roads. And there was one team that developed an app, and they did great in the challenge. They developed an app to get people to be able to coordinate carpooling. And then yet, 9 months later, one of the team members said to me, all of us who on our team, we had the same class schedule, we lived in the same neighborhood, and we still didn't carpool. So all the reasons that people said they weren't carpooling, like it's not convenient or whatever their reasons, that the team then solved weren't the real reasons. And the real reasons might be the things that people don't admit, but that they feel or that they don't think about. And so design thinking is always about digging deeper into what's really going on that maybe people haven't noticed before. So once you've and you're not just empathizing with users, you're kind of understanding the whole system and doing a deep dive into it. On our website, we have that IDEO shopping cart video. That's probably the most famous and well-used and oldest design thinking video. If you haven't watched it, please do, because it absolutely just shows the process of a deep dive of what it looks like to go down into the four corners of the earth and really explore a challenge. Once you have so much data that you're all mixed up, then it's okay, what parts of this do we actually think is important? Where is the opportunity? And that takes discernment. And of course, this isn't linear. I'm presenting it linearly, but you often go around. You often then do some more empathy but there's this stage of okay, now what does this all mean? And only then, and this is the key part about design thinking, only then do ideas start to emerge. Ideas do not emerge from, wouldn't it be cool if we had an app? They emerge from, whoa, now that I really understand why that elderly person, why that mother isn't going downtown. Only now can I begin to, oh, well, now it's obvious that actually the thing everyone thought was a cool idea isn't a cool idea, that something else perhaps is, okay? Then you're testing it, and I'm actually not gonna, well, that will come up as we go, but tonight I'm gonna be focusing on the early stages. But the point of prototyping, as I said last week, is that you don't know if you're doing something truly new. You can't predict, you can't predict what's going to happen, and so you need to just give it a shot, see what happens, and then grow from there, okay? So today I want to just talk a little bit about what we're hoping to inspire you in terms of teamwork, and then I want to introduce you to 3 tools. And of course there are hundreds and hundreds of tools, and I'm just giving you 3. And even those I cannot go into in depth, I just want to point you in the direction. But of course we have this wonderful thing now called the internet, where you can find all the information you want. And on Facebook, Michael and I are more than happy to answer any questions you have. So, okay, so your team dynamic is going to matter. And I want to talk about 3 points. One is what I would urge you to think about is your individual traits and how you work together, your individual skills and networks, because unlike in a traditional case competition where you're in a room, here you're going to be out reaching out to your networks, how they come together and how will you make decisions. So the first most important thing that I hope is it's sort of the basis for any kind of problem solving work is to understand the difference between divergence and convergence and consciously separate them. So divergence is when you generate ideas, expanding the playing field. You are imagining, visualizing, seeking out the unusual, enlarging the options. And typically in most of our organizations, and for those of you who are busy students, we don't diverge very much because we need to be task-oriented. And that is not bad, but if you are not diverging enough, you can't come to anything new. So it's necessary, it's not bad, but this design thinking challenge is about giving you the opportunity to be more divergent than you usually would be so that you can practice that skill so that when you're in that high pressure workplace situation in the future, you've practiced diverging. So to expand the options, and then converging is when you start to cluster things, start to group them, start to to select between them. Now, the reason this doesn't happen in most cases, it doesn't happen naturally because first of all, when people diverge, you start to get nervous because you're like, well, what are we going to do with all these ideas? So if you don't have a process in place for converging, then it becomes very crazy making to diverge too much. And also it can be seen as ineffective if it's not part of a managed process, right? Where you're just coming up with ideas and then what do you do with those ideas? So please think about, as you go forward with your team process, are you more naturally divergent? Do you like to play with ideas? Does that just give you pleasure? Or are you more naturally convergent? Do you start to get kind of antsy and say, oh, why don't we just come to a decision already? Like, why are we spinning our wheels, right? And if you're, whatever type you are, what you need is, there's no wrong or right. It's having the language to say, you know what? I know that we have to converge and come to a decision, but I'm not comfortable with this yet. If we can take 1 more hour or 30 more minutes just to diverge before we converge, I would feel more comfortable. Or can we just actually, like, but what this does is it gives the people who want to converge comfort that you're not going to diverge forever. So as you're going through this process, think about it, because remember, when you submit to the judges, we're asking you to submit 3 ideas, so that's divergent, and as opposed to the right answer, and you're then going to go through another process of iterating on your solution. So all to say, you will be more divergent than usual in this process. Okay, and in the design thinking, so what you can see, this shape of this design thinking model emphasizes that you're diverging, and then converging, that those aren't random shapes that go around it, but that you're opening up and closing down. And a common contrast between traditional business thinking and design thinking is that in traditional business thinking, it's called a decision attitude. The assumption is that the hard thing is making the decision between pre-existing options. Whereas in design thinking, the assumption is it's actually really hard to come up with good options. And once you kind of deeply know the subject matter and come up with these like really brilliant options, then choosing the option actually is a secondary matter. So that it's more about exploring different options rather than a decision attitude is more convergent, more about how do you converge. And a lot of the field of strategy is about how do you converge correctly. This is a great graphic around the groan zone. And basically, we all know that feeling. We're diverging, diverging, diverging. And then you get to the point where you're like, oh, come on, this is such a waste of time. You know, like everybody, guys, come on. Then we're like, we're just paralyzed here. And you get annoyed with yourself and your teammates. What's important at this point is not to get so annoyed when you reach the groan zone that you jump back to the most obvious solution, but rather to navigate that and have some faith that if you keep moving through, you will then come to a solution that is better. Also, what you need to realize is some people reach their groan zone after an hour and some people reach it after a month. And so it's just having the language in your team to negotiate that. Okay. So that was the first thing, just about who you are as an individual and just being conscious that this challenge will be asking you to diverge more than is mostly typical within a business program. And so just that you're aware of that and that it's okay, that it's a bit uncomfortable. That's what we're doing, and that's why we have 2 rounds on the first case, so that you can actually have some space to play with ideas and go down some rabbit holes you wouldn't otherwise go down. Okay, so in terms of your individual skills, knowledge networks, that's really important, what you guys bring to this as individuals. And what IDEO says is that the ideal design thinker is a T-shaped person. So somebody who has expertise. Maybe you are deeply knowledgeable in accounting or marketing or whatever it is. Or maybe something completely, maybe you're just a great shopper, or maybe you hate shopping, maybe that's your deep knowledge, and you have that expertise, but that you're also able to broadly to span between different people, to understand different perspectives, so you're not so stuck in that knowledge base. So that is sort of the general attitude. And the story that I always think about is we had a major client that our MBA students who are average age 40 with all of them have quite a bit of managerial experience. We had a major client come in for 3 weeks straight. They worked on it full time for 3 weeks. And this client said that they wanted to internationalize, but they did not want to go to Australia. But there was one team that they had deep knowledge about Australia. And this team ended up sharing that with the client. And then the client actually ended up going into Australia. So my point is, that because this team, like if you on your team have deep knowledge about something, use it, bring it forward, share it with, bring your knowledge forward. And this was a moment from last year that really stuck with me, which was there was a team who stood up and they were in the final presentation. It was a transportation one last year, and they said that they had changed their solution at the final hour. And the guy said, I'm a farmer, and I realized that the challenge was around how to transport, how to move seniors, how to nudge seniors to be using fewer single occupancy vehicles. And he's like, I just realized that we were treating these seniors as if they were cattle. And once I came to that realization, I said, guys, we got to stop and we got to change directions, which is what the team did. But it was that moment that him bringing in that that him being a farmer became relevant. Okay, kind of zooming through this so I can get to the tools, but I do think I really want to emphasize the importance of your dynamic as a team is going to mean so much. And when you get onto campus, I think you're going to get to know the other teams, and that's going to be, we have different ways for you to be sharing knowledge while still acknowledging that that there is a competitive element here. The last thing that's important for your team is how you will make decisions. And there's no one right way to make decisions. They're all, but it's just that you have to have a process, especially when you're getting into the creative space, because what happens is everybody has ideas, but then sometimes the worst thing you can do is actually try to please everybody, right? Maybe there is actually a brilliant idea in there that's unique and distinct, and sometimes that's not the case. Sometimes bringing different people's ideas together is necessary. So having a decision-making process, because once you, especially when you diverge a lot and you have a lot of ideas on the table, having a decision-making process is really key. And so of course, if you look at this graphic, it could be a single individual. You can decide, okay, like you guys, actually, you two members of the team, about accounting and financials. You can make the decision about that. It can be by voting. It can be we need to all have consensus, or we need to have unanimous consensus. Everybody has to absolutely have buy-in. Often one way of doing consensus is just the 5-finger rule. Like, okay, if everybody says that they have at least 3 out of 5 fingers, then we're going to go forward. That's sort of a quick and dirty way to do it. I can't see the chat, but I've heard the joke a lot of times about the 1-fingered voting. So a way not to make decisions, though, the only bad way is what you see on this graphic called plop. And that's just when people put ideas out there and kind of nobody, just like everyone kind of ignores it and moves on, right? That's a way to lead to hurt feelings or to lead to people disengaging because they're like, well, why would I put my ideas out there if then they're just kind of not even acknowledged. What I think I'm going to do is, before I go on, so now I have some tools, but I want to go on and see, how do I do this? See what's in the chat box. But of course, oh yeah, here we go. I just want to check into the chat box. Want to see what's going on. Yes, exactly, Lisa. That is the whole point, exactly like Michael said. Okay, so that seems to be the only comments on the chat box. Okay, let me now go back to the slides. All right, so now I want to share 3 tools, and I'm hoping if I don't have time for all of them, we'll do 2, but just to get you started on the common tools and some of the common design tools. And the first one is personas. And personas, of course, are because the empathize stage asks you to delve into an unmet, often unarticulated need. And a persona is just, and those of you in marketing know this, are just, and when I co-teach with my my colleague who's a marketing prof, I'm not using the term completely correctly because she differentiates between proto-personas and different kinds. But I'm just going to use for now, personas is when you sort of use one person, whether that's real or whether it's an amalgamation, and I'll talk about that, to represent, to bring an image of who you are talking about. And several teams last year at different stages used personas, and I have to say it was very, very effective. And so that's when you sort of, instead of talking in generalities, you allow the listener to understand, okay, so for example, the way our challenge came about was we were sitting there with Jeff Bray, brainstorming all kinds of different issues, and our administrator Sylvia was talking about how she hates going downtown. So you could then bring Sylvia as a persona and then bring her through the journey of how she would transform and use her as an example, because when you bring a real person into it, you're dealing with more nuanced information and you're better able to communicate. So come on, PowerPoint. There it goes. Okay. What we're going to do is a little exercise. What I want you to do is I'm going to send you guys, because Michael and I practiced this and it didn't actually work, so I'm going to put a link in the chat box. And what I'd like you to do is to go and come back in 5 minutes and just watch this video. But before you go, let me tell you what it's about. The design thinking challenge we're using as a case study for tonight is design the mechanic experience, the experience of going to a mechanic. And this is somebody talking about their mechanic experience. And what I would like you to think about specifically when you're watching the video, what I'm going to ask you about after is what is important to Erica, and don't ignore emotions. And then we're going to go on to, okay, if that's what's important, what do you think she'd want in a mechanic? Okay, so go away. It's 5:54, so 6 p.m. exactly. We're going to log back on. I'm going to keep talking. Go watch that video, please. What is important to Erica, and what do you think she'd want in a mechanic? And we're going to use this around an exercise around designing the mechanic experience. Okay? I'll see you in 6 minutes. All right, so it was depressing. Okay, let's talk for a moment about the video. What does Erica want and need? Sorry, I want to just look at my slides to get my exact question. What is important to Erica? I think it is. Yeah, what is important to Erica? So, like, you can jump on the mic or you can chat in the chat box. But what is I don't know if my mic was on. I think I was talking, but my mic was off. But so welcome back. And what I wanted to say is what is important to Erica? So after you saw that, you're redesigning the mechanic experience. You have just interviewed Erica. What is important to Erica? Oh, you can hear me? Awesome. Thanks, Brandon. And you can jump on the mic or you can type in the chat box. Let's just generate a few solutions.
Hi, I'll jump on the mic. Her truck was really, really important to her. That was probably what was so depressing. But I think also her ego was very important too, you know. And I could empathize because I don't know diddly squat about how the car runs. It turns on. When I press the brake, it stops, and that's all I needed to do. And so, you know, you don't want to be humiliated, but she also is approaching it from an interest point of view. She actually wants to know how all the bits work together and everything else. So there's kind of a surface level interest in your truck, but a much deeper level of protecting her ego, but also satisfying her curiosity.
Yes.
I'll step away now.
Thank you, Lee. Which I recognize your voice and I recognize your comment. So yes. Anybody else? What was important to Erica? Anything else that Lee hasn't mentioned? You want to jump on and either type or jump on the mic?
Hi, I'm going to jump on the mic. My name's Elizabeth, by the way. I think what was important to her was her independence as well. The fact that she wanted to, like she said, she didn't want to be looked at as someone who's calling her father for everything. She is educated, well educated, and is a person who actually seeks out to learn, like Lee said before, when she wants to learn about how her car runs. So next time, you know, if someone's trying to like jiff her out of some money, she knows what she's meant to be looking for, how much things cost in order to get them fixed. So that's just my 2 cents.
Mm-hmm. What else? Okay, I don't see anyone speaking up, so I'm gonna go back to the slide. So I think, oh, there we go. I think that Erica wants honesty. She doesn't want to feel like she's being taken advantage of. She wants to be able to ask questions without feeling dumb. She said that the intimidation that she sees when men in smaller trucks drive up makes her feel good. She wants to feel knowledgeable. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Kristen. So where we're going with this is that if her core need is to feel like she's not being taken advantage of, that might lead you down a different. So this is, let's say, the empathize stage, and of course this is a sample size of 1. But let's say you talk to a lot of people and you identify some patterns. The core need of not being taken advantage of is different than the core need of wanting to learn about cars, right? So you're empathizing, and then you're defining. So when you're defining, if in your team you decide the core need of not being taken advantage of is really the crux, that you decide that's important, well, then what's going to happen is it might lead you to solutions like a system where you can somehow check what your mechanic is offering you. And it might not matter to her that she doesn't know what the mechanic's doing, as long as she knows she's not being ripped off. On the other hand, if you decide that the core need here is around education, then that might, when you ideate, lead you to solutions where actually Erica can go in and get a whole educational experience. Now, the hard part of design thinking is you really don't know, right? She might say, I want education, but really, when it comes down to being educated, she doesn't want to be bothered. And if you just let her feel secure that she wasn't being ripped off, she would be fine. And so it's exploring all those different things that you folks have mentioned, like not being humiliated, being independent, having her ego feel okay. And then like really looking at this and looking at patterns across different forms of research you're doing and being like, okay, of all of these, which are we going to stake our claim in and say that we're value? And then that becomes, if you look at the rubric, and we ask for criteria or design principles, that's where you start saying, okay, this solution needs to be, no matter what, it has to ensure that that she has confidence, she's not ripped off. That is the most important thing, and that's where you start to stake your claim. So what I'm trying to show here is how the empathetic research kind of is going to generate a lot of different information, because of course just from this 1 4-minute video you already have a lot of information about Erica, and that then leads directly into the define stage where you actually say, okay, this is what's important, and there's going to be hard decisions there, and then that's what then drives your ideation stage. Okay, so give me a sign that what I'm saying makes sense, please, somebody. Or not. I got to go into PowerPoint, so I'm not going to see the, okay, thank you. Okay, I'm making sense. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to just go back onto share screen, and I'm going to go back to, and we're going to get back into personas. All right. All right, so here we are with Erica. You know what? I'll send out the slides. Here are the things that IDEO came with, which is very, very similar to what you guys came with. Be independent, trust your mechanic. I think we get the point. But then you can put this kind of information in a persona document. And I'm going to send you a template that I have. But honestly, if you Google this, there's a lot of templates, and probably there's a lot that are better than mine. I think there's also online things you can use. But I'll send you guys a template. I'll put it in the Facebook page after this class. So you can see that it can be really powerful in your persona to have an actual image, and it might not be of the actual person because sometimes there's privacy concerns, but it might be of a person who might look like that person, so that people can get a picture of actually a human that you're designing for, a representative quotation. So if you were to decide that what is important is that she wants to feel independent, it might be something about independence, right? So you're going to choose a quotation that not just a random one, because she's going to say a lot of cool things, but one that actually meaningfully sums up what you think is most important from this interview. And then you might fill in different parts of it. I want to draw attention to one part of, this is from, I think it's from Stanford or IDEO. Oh, it's from Stanford. It's from the D School. But that they give a specific formula for creating a design, an insight. And I want to just talk about that formula. So where you're sort of saying, and I'll in the template I'll give you, it will be in there. But this person wants or needs X, however, surprisingly, unexpectedly, but blah, blah, but this. Erica wants to feel empowered, but is not interested in spending time learning about her car. It might be one insight statement. Erica wants to know more about her car's mechanics. Surprisingly, she is unable to draw on her engineering degree. So in the design, the fact that there's a bit of a paradox in this, like if I'm designing a class, it might be like my students want to work in teams, but they get annoyed with other people, you know, or me, I wouldn't say my students, right? It's the fact that there's a paradox in this is okay. That's what makes it a juicy design problem to solve, that it's actually not obvious how you would solve this problem. So, so this is where you're distilling your insights. And I want to really be clear, actually, that this is, what I'm sharing with you now is one method. You do not have to use personas in this competition. You do not have to use the other methods I'm about to show you. You, like, truly, I'm just trying to give you a little bit of some of the tools that are sometimes used in design thinking, but the core thing is that and if you look at the rubric, there's no mention of a persona. The requirement is that you do empathic research along with traditional research, and that you then come up with, that you kind of drive that down to some key insights, that you converge on some key insights. No requirement that you have used personas. So I want to be really clear. What I'm sharing in today's workshop is some tools to give you kind of a flavor of how often people work with design thinking, But this is not it. Like you can win the challenge and not use personas, and that's okay too. This is just one tool among hundreds of tools. It's kind of like if you do case analysis, you need to use a fishbone diagram, or you need whatever, right? You don't have to do that. Okay. There's different ways you can use personas. So one way is a typical user. So you've talked to many, many, many people, and now you're going to kind of distill it in a single in a single persona. But that's going to sum up for yourselves as you're doing your thinking. Another way. Sorry, I think I forgot to put this on. Like for me, I do a lot of like curriculum design. So let's say when I was leading our MBA redesign, we had big posters made up of like 5 typical MBA students, you know, and then when we were designing, we could always say, would it work for them? Would it work for them? Would it work for them? So I guess different typical user, and it could be one person or it could be different people. It could be, you could use real people or you could use actually an amalgamation. And that's, there's different ways to do it. Ideal future state user. Here's a persona of Sylvia today. Here's a persona of Sylvia when she's actually downtown shopping every day, you know, that you could use that. An extreme user. So often in design thinking, we're not looking at the typical people. We're looking at the people who are different than the typical so we can learn from them. So the people who love going downtown, who are different from our user, what is it that we can learn for them? So let's say in the world of education, sometimes it happens that you're designing for people with special needs, and that ends up leading to classroom innovations that are better for everybody, you know? So often you're looking at the extreme users, the people who are not typical, in order to learn from why do they love it, why do they hate it so much? So there's lots of different ways to use personas, but the goal of it really is to drill down on to actually imagine a real human being behind your solutions, okay? So I'm going to leave that a bit ambiguous. So this is one tool you might choose to use, and if you choose to use it, there are many ways to use it, and there's a lot of information out there that you can adopt. I just had actually an MBA student interview 63 people to create. I think he created 3 personas out of 63 interviews for why youth use the why or don't, and you know, and so there's a lot of different, I guess what I'm trying to say is I can't cover everything in a workshop. I'm just trying to point you towards a potentially useful tool. Next useful tool, which I'm not going to go into, but that's commonly used in design thinking, is journey mapping. And I kind of put these 2 images out because these are 2 good resources. Journey Map in the D-School Bootcamp Bootleg, which is on the website, and it's kind of like a standard free resource about design thinking that's really good. They talk about journey mapping, and then the examples I'm about to show you are from Designing for Growth. And journey mapping is just understanding, you have your typical user, Erica, what are things like over time for this user? And so, for example, I know this is a bit hard to see. This is from Designing for Growth, and this is an example of how they were mapping a student experience from the decision where they decided to enroll at Darden University, from their starting it, their first year, their second year. And then what you could see with that squiggly line underneath is they were mapping their emotions. So what is particularly a high point, what's a low point? And then you can learn from the high points and you could say, oh, the low point is where we need to actually address this experience. What's really, you know, one thing, and again, there's a lot of information out there. This could be, right, people do whole workshops on just this one tool. But I just want to point you in this direction in case you want to use it. So you can do the journey of someone going downtown, for example. And where to stop or start it can be really important. So do you start, so for example, I was doing a student project for a theater company in town. Do we start the journey map the minute the flyer comes to my house about the new play and somebody either throws it out or doesn't? Do you start the journey map when they go to the play? Do you start the journey map when they're at dinner before the play? Like where you actually, what's part of the journey and where you might intervene is really, it can be really important. I'm actually just going to, how do I do this? Go back into Blue Jeans for a minute. Okay, I see that there's no questions. Michael, you just signal me if anything comes up. Okay, let me go back onto my slides. All right, so that's just another tool that I want to point to you that's commonly used in design thinking to understand how humans navigate different experiences. So if you can imagine someone going downtown, what are they experiencing? What are they experiencing before they get in the car, when they're trying to park? That kind of thing. Another way to do it is to map best and worst case scenarios. This is an example where, where it's two different people going, two different children getting ready for school. One in the worst case scenario of like, oh, this is such a drag. The other, the best case scenario, yay, it's breakfast. Yes, I'm sitting next to my best friend. The key reason I included this slide is because the people who made it created the journey map, and then they were able to analyze what is important to these kids. So what they found from mapping their journey was, okay, what's important is they want connection. That there's like where the high points in the journey involved getting affection, being considered, being included. They wanted physical well-being. High points in the journey was when they felt well rested. They wanted feelings of peace, and they wanted autonomy. So if you were going to redesign the morning routine, now having these things about what's important, if we could give children more autonomy while also making sure they feel connected, then we'd have a killer solution. Okay? So journey maps they're not just to show information, they're also a source of information to then be analyzed by you. For me, this is just an example of how I used one in the past year, really quick and dirty. I asked OMP is our major MBA project. I asked two students, can you map for me, like on this timeline, it's a 9-month project, what doing your OMP was like. You can see Tom on the left was really depressed when I failed his final proposal twice. Like those are real low points. And Chris, even though it wasn't as hard for him, it was still like a low point was still around the final proposal. So when I redesigned the class, I'm like, okay, we got to get the final proposal going here. I have to really address that's the point in the process that I need to make better. So an example, so this is just, the reason I'm sharing this is it does not have to be complicated. Like these students did this in, maybe 10 minutes. I gave them the chart and what were your high points and low points. Okay, but it can, and of course there's consultancies that come in and do a very thorough job. 6:15, we are so on schedule. I am just going to I'm at the chat box now looking at it. I'm going to ask you any questions that you want to stop and ask me right now about these tools. So just to be really clear, to emphasize again, these are just two tools. You don't have to use them. It's just, I feel like by pulling out 3 tools out of the many, 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 I'm really privileging these. Oh, sorry, but that's just the MBA major project. I should have taken that jargon out. Sorry about that. It's just organizational management project. That's, apologies on that. So you don't have to do this. This is just an example of how you get to know those you're designing for. Okay? Let me go back and I want to share one more tool, and this is around the define stage. So I just shared with you a couple of tools around the empathy stage, and really actually deeply understanding people and the problem is more important than any tool. Okay? Just actually earnestly, open-heartedly listening to people and asking them questions and being curious is more important than any tool. But let me share one more tool, which is actually my personally favorite tool that I always use, called the Web of Abstraction. And what this is it's just a tool for making sure you're turning over, kind of like a puzzle, you turn over all the pieces before you try to solve it. Well, this is a tool for just turning over all the possible ways of looking at a challenge before you actually go about solving it. So how it works is this. You start with your initial problem statement, and then you go up the web by asking why and why else. And you go down by asking what's stopping this from happening and what else, or you can do what might enable this to happen. And I'm going to show you how it works. People always ask, is it like the 5 whys? And it's not, because the 5 whys assume if you keep asking why, you'll get to like the real answer. So it's convergent. This is a divergent tool. It generates lots and lots and lots of possible answers, and then you can then strategically select among them. So I'm going to give you an example. What if you have a goal of earning $1 million a year? And so at the middle, you're like, how might I earn $1 million? But it could be, how might we get people to come downtown? Or it could be, how might we design a better mechanic experience? When you move up, how might I earn it? You're asking why. Well, why do you want to solve that problem? Oops, I'm going backwards. I want to launch my business and I need capital. I want more time with my kids. Why else? And I got to say, else is such a magic word in divergent thinking. I don't want to take orders from other people. Why else? I want to earn as much as my brother. Why else? Okay, so then you can go up from each one. Why do you want to launch your business? Well, I want to make the world better. And I want to be my own boss. And I'm just giving examples. I'm not actually going through the whole thing. Why do you want to sorry, I just had to make it smaller so that I could, because the screen is in my way. I want to, why do you want to earn as much as your brother? Well, I want my kids to go to the same private school as their cousins, or I want to stop feeling insecure around him. Okay, so the point here is that you're kind of mapping all the upper order reasons. So if in fact the real problem is that you feel insecure around your brother, then the answer, then you might ask the question, well, how might I feel more confident, or how might I not feel insecure? But if that's the real problem, earning $1 million isn't going to solve it. You need to go to therapy, right? So what you're doing when you're mapping, or maybe that's not the solution, but it's more in that line. You're mapping all of these challenges and they're getting more abstract. Make sure that actually making $1 million is going to be the thing that actually solves the real problem. Once you've decided, yeah, you know what? No, it's really that I want to earn $1 million. That's really the real thing I want to solve. Then you go down. So what's stopping this from happening? For example, I'm lazy. Well, what else? I don't have startup capital to start my business. I don't have an education, etc. And then you can keep going down from there. Well, I'm lazy. Well, what's stopping you from overcoming your laziness? I don't enjoy work. I don't have a lot of energy. I like surfing the internet. So here you could see that each of these challenges is that if the real problem is you're lazy, you would solve this in a different way than if really the problem is you need to go out and get an education. So what this is a tool for mapping out all the possible ways you might look at a problem. So if you think about this part of the web, that people, how might people go downtown? Well, what's stopping people from going downtown? Well, maybe it's, Jeff mentioned a few things, homelessness. Well, maybe it's that people are concerned about safety because there's this, they're concerned about safety. That's a different thing than not having parking. That's a different thing than wanting to internet shop. That's a different thing than et cetera, et cetera. And depending on how you frame the problem, it will lead to different solutions. So this is the basic tool. I think I want to just ask. I'm going to stop. It always comes down to therapy. Yes, it does. That's the answer to all problems. So any 6:22, I have 8 minutes. I can run you through an exercise. We have time, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to run you through an exercise. Let me just make sure everything is good there. Yes. So I'm going to run you through an exercise. We're going to try this together. And I just realized that it might be, if I don't, let me just try it. Okay. So, do you right now see a virtual sticky board or cork board on your screen? Yeah, awesome, woohoo. Okay, so we're gonna go on with the mechanic example, and I'm gonna show you how this works. So, how might we design a mechanic experience that educates clients? So let's just pretend we talked to a lot of Ericas and we decided that the core issue was actually around education, that clients want to be educated. When you move up, you might ask, well, why would a mechanic want to solve this problem? One, to get more clients. Why else? To empower clients. Why else? Why else? So now I invite you to jump on the mic or just write in the chat box. Why else might we design a mechanic experience? Why do we want to solve this problem or embrace this opportunity in the first place? Okay, to build loyalty. Thank you. Not that I realize that's you, Michael. So maybe we're like, I feel like I'm planting this, but great answer, Michael. What else? Michael, do you have any other ideas?
Yes, I think to treat people with respect. Oh yeah, Anna's got a similar idea. Yeah,
Yes.
There's more coming there. Yeah.
To add to that, to create personal relationships. Yes, okay, to create personal relationships. Okay, so I'm going to stop there because the idea is just to get the idea. Okay, so let's say after you look at this, you say, oh, you know what? The real challenge here, we don't really need to, if our real goal is to build personal relationships, maybe we don't need education. Maybe we can do it a different way. In that case, you might swap this out. Okay, so all this is a tool to map out the different options. It's not a tool to, it doesn't give you which one is right. Let's say you decide, no, we want to do education, okay? So let's just brainstorm now. How might we design a mechanic experience that educates clients? So let's somebody put forward an idea. How might we do that? What would that look like? Videos in the bay, educational videos in the bay. What else? Shop tours. What else? Use layman terms. Okay. So this is great. I'm going to stop here because this is enough. Layman terms. Oh, making the bay like an educational search where people can watch. Okay. Layman terms when talking to customers. Okay. Lisa and Jessica, I see your guys' stuff, and I'm going to just leave it here because I'm going to just keep it as is just for the sake of us understanding. Okay. So what we have is different categories now of ideas. One is, well, actually, it could be, one is that there's something ongoing, like so one is how might we educate through like using ongoing videos. So how might we educate through tours, and how might we educate? So it's a very different thing if you organize tours versus if you actually are educating the mechanics. So an underlying question that you might ask, let's say you were going to develop this one around layman terms when talking. Oh no, I took it off by mistake instead of doing that. An underlying question you might use is how might we educate mechanics to be educators, right? Might be sort of a broader question, and it might be layman terms, it might be something else, right? But this is kind of getting you towards like sort of you still need to think about ideas. You don't know what the answer is yet, but you're framing the challenge. Okay, I'm going to leave it here. I really just wanted to give you a sample of one of the tools that's sometimes used for problem framing to sort of lay out for you. You probably wouldn't show this to a judging panel, although the judging panels at the Design Thinking Challenge do often like to see your work. But you wouldn't necessarily show this to the judging panel. It would be more a tool for you to make sure you've covered all the different ways of looking at things before you then move on and decide, okay, this is where our focus is going to be. Okay, I think I'm at the end of the PowerPoints here. Yes, so this was the goal, foundation, you as a team to talk a little bit about the teamwork guide at 628. Perfect. And just to give you 3 tools out of many tools, many of which are on the website, that will begin to allow you to start thinking about how you might work on empathizing and defining the first 2 stages of the process. Now, I see a question from Lisa. Is the video about process or about solutions? With a bit of how we got there. Oh, the video. Well, look at the criteria, Lisa. It's actually about solutions. It's not about what you did actually, but underlying it will be what you did, because if you talk about the research, often, well, it's interesting actually as you're saying this. So I'm thinking of a video for last year. It's more about, like, definitely if you interviewed a whole bunch of people, you know, the judges will be impressed to know how many people you interviewed, but that would come out in when you talk about the results, right? So it's about the solutions, not about the process, but through talking about, okay, back up. I'm not answering in a clear way, because it's not about solutions or process. It's about, like, there's the highest percentage is for what research you've done and what insights you've gained for that research. So that's, in a way, not about your process. It's about what you've done. It's about results in a way, but it's not the solution to the problem. It's about actually, okay, what have you found in your research that's useful? So that's the highest weighted category for this round, is about your research, showing your research and showing that actually it's meaningful and that it led you to insight. Next is, okay, so what are your 3 solutions that you're putting forward? And so then you will be assessed on that. Next is, okay, how did you actually prototype? What did you do, and how is that meaningful? And then the next is 10% on presentation. So I think it's in the rubric. And I hope that answers your question. I realize I was a bit convoluted. Do you have a follow-up question, or is that good enough for now? Okay, thanks. Any other questions before we log off for the night? It is 6:30. We did a lot. I hope it was clear enough. We did a lot of talking. Please go to the website where we put links to many, many different tools and approaches. But any last questions for now? All right. Now that we have the challenge, the fun can begin. So looking forward to seeing what you folks come up with, as is Jeff and all the judges here in Victoria. All right. Have a good night, everybody. Bye-bye.